are very few moments in our lives where we have the privilege to witness history taking place. This is one of those moments. This is one of those times. The people of Egypt have spoken, their voices have been heard, and Egypt will never be the same.
Better late than never, the United States was pretty slow to see the revolution coming in Egypt, but it is grappling to gain its footing now. If the fall of Mubarak signals a change in how the Arab world is thinking about itself, it also certainly demands a change in how Washington views the region. On the line now, joining us, a longtime watcher of U.S. policy, Helen Thomas. She was the longest ever serving White House correspondent, covering that beat for 50 years. At 90, she is now a columnist for the Falls Church News Press, a weekly paper in Virginia. Helen, I've got to start by asking you your reaction to the news from Egypt.
Well, of course, I think it's magnificent. It's really the people's movement, and it comes from young people who have the future in their hands. I hope it keeps spreading throughout the Arab world. There's a real need for freedom and democracy.
Where do you think the U.S. comes out in all of this? Here's what El-Baradei, the Nobel winner, had to say days back, January 29th, as the protests in Tahrir Square were facing violence.
I believe these statements who are preaching democracy and social justice have either option to take the side of the people or the regime. We cannot have a middle ground here. These countries should recalculate their agendas. Change is coming, no doubt, and the Egyptian people will look at those countries from different perspectives according to their stances.
What do you think? How will the Arab world look at the role the U.S. played in this transition, or didn't play?
I think they can see how President Obama was very ambivalent. He was not quite sure what was happening. I think his information was not too good. And it's always, this is a new age where the whole technology and so forth is really informing the American people and the world, even before Obama gets the message. So I think he was a little slow on the trigger, but he's waking up now, as all the world is and as America is.
So if you were there in the press corps seats today, what would you be asking the U.S. administration?
I would ask him, what's next? What is the U.S. role next? And did it bribe Egypt to keep its peace agreements with Israel?
The U.S. has relied on not very democratic regimes, not just in Egypt, but certainly there, for 30 years. What is the significance to the United States militarily, in the region, strategically, in that region, of having a strongman toppled? What does it mean for U.S. policy?
I think U.S. has to go back to the drawing board, see what's happening, make up his mind in terms of it has to roll with the punches. It has to stand for democracy, which is preaching all along, although it may be at a cost of what he thinks is stability. But you can't deny people their rights.
But if the U.S. had supported democracy in 2001 and 2003, it would never have got its war against Iraq because the people of these countries opposed that war.
You're right. Well, nobody knows why we went to Iraq now. We have not had a president tell us the truth of why we went in. Certainly President Bush didn't tell the truth. No weapons of mass destruction, no ties to Al-Qaeda, and so forth. I mean, why the American people took that for so long, I will never know.
You wrote this week that you hope the feeling of change, the spirit of change, will affect even people right here in the United States. What, in your view, needs to change here?
We do. We do have to change our attitudes. We have to be better to the Palestinians, be more fair in the Middle East. I mean, our reputation is not great in the Arab world or North Africa. We've not always been on God's side.
With respect to democracy, there is a call for democracy in Egypt. They may get it. We've had our challenges here, too, with freedom of speech and with talking about, well, in particular, Middle East issues. You fell afoul of that yourself. What do we need to be talking about here that we're currently not discussing?
You can't talk about Israel. That's off limits in this whole country. If you say so, you're anti-Semitic, you're this and that, you're for the Holocaust, and you're for Hitler, and all of this nut stuff, this baloney that's been fed to the American people. I have a right to take a stand for decency and kindness to people, and people who live under occupation, under the heel of occupiers, I'll always be sympathetic to.
So going back to what needs to change in the United States, our previous guest, Nawal Sadari, talked about patriarchy and imperialism and capitalism. There are obviously things that link all three. One of those is the sense that we know better than you. Does that have to change? And how would you see that changing? Where would you find the evidence of that changing here in our relations to the Arab world?
Mm-hmm. Well, our interests have always been different, I think, from the Arab people on the ground. Boots on the ground. They perceive America as being against them. And they're right.
Do you think democracy will come to Egypt, or are you worried about more authoritarian rule?
Oh, I think it will. I think the people now understand their power, and I think the military will get the word, too, that they cannot hold power beyond September. And if they do, the people will be back on the streets, and they can't really fight that.
Helen Thomas is now a columnist with the Fall Church News Press in Virginia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.